Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure those of you who read the book, Small Things Like These, knew what to expect. Those of you who didn't may have received a little bit of a shock. Just before we introduce our guests this evening, as I mentioned before we started, this is not ancient history. This took place about 15 kilometres from where my mother grew up. And the last of these places closed down, or one of the last of these places closed down very close to where I grew up in Dublin in 1996, when I was 25 years old. Now, I'm a lot older than that now, but I'm still old enough to remember what those women behind the wall, as we call them in Hyde Park in Drumcondra in Dublin. Now, what you don't see very much of in the film we've just seen is the inside of the convents, the Magdalen laundries and the mother and baby homes. But one person who knows an awful lot about them is going to join me on stage because he grew up in the Goldenbridge orphanage just on the south bank of the River Liffey and Dublin. And I'd like you to give a warm welcome now to my good friend all the way from North Shopping and from Dublin, Buddy Mooney, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you want the book?
He has a few notes that he's brought with him. This, by the way, is the beginnings of a book that I've been telling Buddy that he has to write, but we'll do the negotiations for that afterwards.
Should I keep that or?
Oh, yeah, Brad. We'll just turn on this microphone here to make sure that we can hear you loud and clear. Can you, there we go. Can you give us a bar of Mustang Sally there now, or would that be?
Mustang Sally.
Do you? Buddy, could I just maybe start by asking you, how do you feel when you sit here among these people and you watch a story like this on the screen?
Quite painful. Yeah. It does bring back so many memories, little details, how the building was always raining. The nuns themselves, how cold they were. It felt like a prison, which it was for the girls. I think it's best if I give a little insight into...
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to adjust that microphone down just a little bit, right? We'll bend it down there because we want people to be able to hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
There he is.
Oh, that's lovely.
Actually, we don't need a second soundtrack with Mustang Sally. But maybe we'll start with how you ended up in the Goldenbridge orphanage there in Dublin.
Yeah. My name is Buddy. I was born in 1961, July 1961. I was born through wedlock, which is my mother and father weren't married. And I was actually brought by my mother to London to be born, because at that time it was bad for a girl to be pregnant without being married. So I was born, and then more or less 4 or 5 days after that, my mother brought me to Cork, to an adoption society in Cork. It was run by the nuns. I was there for 8 months. I was weeks away from being adopted by an American couple. They were doctors, so I heard. But my father done a search for me, funny enough, through the Catholic churches, and found out where I was. And he went down with his brothers and took me out. So ended up, he brought me back to my grandparents, but sadly my father and my grandfather didn't get on. So my father went with me to back and forth to London, because at that time, no man could have the custody of a child. But he was on the run all the time, and he was finding it very difficult. My dad was finding it very difficult to take care of me. So he decided the best thing was to hide me in Goldenbridge orphanage, thinking that that was a good place to put me. Sadly, my first memory of life is actually when I was about 2.5, and he bringing me by the hand into Goldenbridge. The nuns were waiting there, and excuse me, he brought me in, and they took me for a walk, and when I went back, my dad was gone. So I ended up spending 5.5, 6 years there. I suppose some of the things that happened, which would have happened to these girls as well. The orphanage where I was an all boys place, and there was big dormitories with beds, lots of beds. Sorry, I hope you can still hear me. Sorry, you find it difficult. Sorry. The nuns would come in around 6:30 every morning, carrying bamboo sticks, and if you weren't out of your bed and kneeling down saying your prayers, by the time they got to you, they beat you with the bamboo sticks. I don't want to make anybody sad or anything like that. I just want to let you know what did go on. So I'm not trying to upset anybody.
You were left-handed as well, and they weren't fans of that.
That's right. Being left-handed to the nuns was a sign of the devil. So they would beat my left hand until it was bleeding. And then they would get a piece of rope, twine, and tie it in the loop of my pants so as I couldn't move my left hand. I was, 4, 5. And they made me write with my right hand. Also, after when I said the prayer, you said your prayers, you went downstairs to the washroom, we lined up in this, which reminded me of that, lined up, we're all kids, and we had these small hand basins that you wash yourself every morning. If any of the children cried, the nuns would put them in the tumble dryers. They tried to put me in, but I bit one of the nuns, and I got beaten for it. But I've got that picture of the kids in the tumble. Now, they didn't turn on the tumble dryers. They put them in the tumble dryers and closed the doors. And I still have that picture of the faces looking out at me, which is not very nice, pretty horrific.
You were telling me, Buddy and I have obviously spoken before. We said Buddy was actually one of the first Irish people I met when I moved here to Sweden. He was behind the bar out in O'Connor's pub in Uppsala. It wasn't named after me at that point, I'm sure it is now. But you told me back then, pretty much immediately when we met, about some of the troubles and some of the things that had happened in your past. But one of the things you didn't tell me, I always knew you loved football, and I always knew that you loved Liverpool. But you never told me, you told me the other day a story about playing football and asking the nuns for a glass of water because it was closed.
That's right. I think I was between 4 and 5, and I was playing football out in the yard. It was around 30 degrees that day. I think it was July. I was playing football with the kids, and it got very, very hot. And this was actually an irregular occurrence. I went up to the nuns who were standing in this doorway, and I says, "Could I have a drink of water?" "No, go away." So outside, they had 4 toilets that were never washed, and the only thing I could do was put my hand down the toilet and drink the toilet water. I ended up being rushed to hospital, and some sort of infection. I got these growths between my thumb and my finger on both hands, big sores. So I was in hospital for a while. Then when I came back, I was alone in the dormitory because the other kids had went summer to houses and different places. So I was on my own. The nuns used to come up once a day and leave a tray of food, tray with food, and they leave the medicine beside me, and I wouldn't see them for the day. And I was there for, I think it was a week. I liked the medicine so much that I drank it all.
On the first day?
On the first day. Thankfully, it didn't do anything to me. So, yeah, that's...
You were placed in the care, in inverted commas, of these people, but they didn't take very good care of you because there was single men coming in and out of these places.
Yeah, actually, one other thing that, well, many things, but one other thing happened was I got, or all the kids at that time, we got ringworm. I don't know what that is in Swedish, or if everybody knows what it is.
It's not very pleasant, whatever it is. It was ringworm, yeah.
Ringworm. And so all the boys, we were all marched down naked to this big room where all the nuns were standing. And there was, I think it was called Our Ladies' School, which was a girls' school about 5 minutes away. And they brought all the girls in and stood them all in front of us to just stare at us and make us feel, again, I was what, 5, 6 years of age, and they all stood there just laughing at us. And then we were painted with this special solution with a bucket and a paintbrush, and it was white, and they painted us from our neck down to our toes and our hands as well. And then they said, don't put your hands near your eyes or it'll sting you and you'll cry, and if you cry, we'll beat you. So that was there.
Bit of a catch-22.
It was, yeah. Sorry, the question you asked me.
I was mentioning the fact that people would come to
Yeah.
the orphanage as well.
The nuns allowed men to come up and take boys out, whether it was for a day or for weekends. And my first memory was of this man who took us to a cinema in Dublin, the Metropole.
I remember it well, yeah.
And he would take us to the toilet and be looking at us. And I ended up anyway that he was taking me away on weekends. And I think you know what happened every time he took me away for a weekend. Yeah, and the nuns allowed that. They never checked on the men or whatever. They just allowed them come up. I remember the guy had a Morris, a little Mini, grey Mini. So yeah, that's unfortunately what happened. And
In all your time, those 6 years that you were there, and I know that your father was able to bring you to your grandparents at Christmas on occasion and that, but did you ever feel any love or any warmth from the people that were supposed to be looking after you?
No.
Not once.
Nothing, no. I felt like a prisoner, I suppose.
Your father eventually decided that he didn't want you being there anymore, and he managed to get you out of there.
Well, it was an agreement with my grandparents. Funny enough, my grandparents didn't live too far away. So I moved in. The deal was that my father would come and see me, but they would look after me. So that was in a place called Inchicore, the Nace Road, Dublin. And I moved in with my grandparents, and my dad would come to see me and take me out or whatever. But then there was a situation where I was 9 and I joined, it was called the Oblates. It was a church and a school where I went to that school. And I went and I joined the choir. But unfortunately, there was a priest. His name was Father McGee. And he was the one who led the choir, who looked after the choir. It was a big choir, but he used to bring me in for extra lessons on my own and interfere with me. So my thoughts of the Catholic Church and the priests and nuns is not very nice. I'd like to say is that my feeling is the way that the nuns treated the girls and the way the nuns treated the boys is probably to do with I say it in a sort of a funny way, they're called nuns because they get none. And I think that is, the problem is they see girls who are getting pregnant and they couldn't have sex. And they see boys and they have an attitude towards the boys. And the priests weren't allowed, or don't get married. So they're paedophiles as well. Not them all, and not all the nurses or nuns, but most of them. And I think that's what the main problem is with nuns and priests is they actually probably should be allowed to get married, and then there wouldn't be so much of a problem. Wouldn't happen, I don't think.
A lot of the situations that you wound up in your life was due to the turbulent life of your father, because he wanted to look after you, but legally he wasn't allowed to have custody of you. And of course, he had his own turbulent relationship with your grandparents. But eventually, he kind of did the best thing that ever happened to you. Could you just tell the story of how it was him that sort of put you on this path to coming here to Sweden?
Before that, I met my mother through the help of my dad, funny enough. I met my mother for the first time in 1982 when I was 21. And that was due to my dad. I have a decent relationship with my mother now. But to cut a long story short, I've tried to commit suicide 3 times. Thankfully, it didn't happen. And then in 1995, my dad, I was living in Dublin. I had a very, very good job. But my dad knew I was unhappy, and he came down to me one Sunday and he had the Irish newspaper called the Sunday Independent. And he says, "But there's a job in Sweden. I think you should go for it." So I went for it, and he was a great help in getting me the job. The sad thing is, 5 days before I went, my dad died. So it was like he had sort of set it up for me to change things in my life. And then I moved to Sweden, buried my dad, went to Sweden, worked in O'Connor's Irish pub. And after a couple of years, this lovely lady walked into the bar. So I looked at her and I said, "Excuse me, would you like to have my children?" And we got married, and we had a daughter called Era. Era's now 25, and she gave birth 8 months ago to my grandchild. So I have a grandchild as well. So I gave up drink 17 years ago because that was also killing me as well. And a lot of good has come out of what's happened. I'm emotional now, of course I am, talking dad and my daughter and that. But so much good has come out of it. And I'm really proud of how my life has went the direction now that it has. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of other kids or people who were involved in that this situation that the girls, boys who sadly either lost their lives or went downhill, a lot of them did, but thankfully I was able to come out of it, and I think that's it really.
I drove down to see you on Sunday, and it was Father's Day, and we both were meeting up with our daughters in Linköping. After all that's happened, after all those dreadful things that happened to you in Goldenbridge and everything that happened to you after, and then eventually come to Sweden and turning into the man you are today, there's two things really. Is there anything that could have been done to help you? And the second question is, are you happy now despite all of those things?
Is there anything that could have helped me? I think the hardest part is, like, I'm talking about it now, but and I've talked to a couple of friends. My daughter has asked me about it, and she's been amazing, incredible. I just wish I probably could have talked to somebody professional for them to, I don't know, just maybe have a few answers rather than just listening, but have a few answers. But otherwise, I'm delighted with life. I mean, a daughter, her boyfriend, I've contact with my mother, and I have a beautiful grandchild called Malwa.
Everybody likes that name, I told you.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to. There'll always be the memories there. I mean, they don't go away, but you can either let them take control or else you just get on with life. And I think the one thing I'm very proud. I'm very proud of myself for having the strength to have just kept going and going and going. And the help of my dad. And sadly I'm divorced, but I still have great relationship with my ex-wife as well, so that's a good thing too. So
I remember when I was thinking of who I wanted to talk to about this particular subject and who I wanted to talk to you about it, and this man came to mind. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Buddy Mooney, please. We're just about running out of time here this evening. Some of the people that this film is about, and Buddy and himself, there has been investigation after tribunal after tribunal in Ireland. And eventually the state decided that people like Buddy were owed 1.5 billion euros, which is around about, I think it's 17 billion Swedish crowns. To this day, the Catholic Church has only paid about 16% of that. 245 million euros is all that they have paid. I've seen 4 people go on hunger strike because they couldn't access the kind of support that Buddy and some others have been able to do. They had to go on hunger strike for 50 days in order to get some rights and support. That hunger strike finished yesterday. This is not new, it's not going away. And we're in a country where we want to criminalise 13-year-old children. I hope for Ireland that our golden bridges are behind us, but I fear for the rest of the world that yours may be in front of you. Go tell your friends to watch this movie and to listen to Buddy's story, and maybe you might learn the hard lessons a little easier than what Ireland did.
Just one more thing. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask just very quickly? Yeah?
Hello.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for sharing your story. It was quite moving. I'm actually a little bit emotional, but I'm going to try to ask a question. So okay. So, as you probably are aware, both of you, Ireland is very known for its resistance against oppression, whether it's, conflicts around the world or, the history with the UK. But why do you think that the resistance against the Catholic Church has been there's been like a culture of silence around? Why do you think that
I mean, this this has been dated back to 1922 onwards. I was born 1961, so I would have been in Goldenbridge 1963, 64. Religion was a massive part of Ireland back then, and I think that the nuns and the churches, especially with the priests, they got a lot of money from the people, and they were very, very overpowering, the priests and the nuns. And going back years ago, even they were very powerful. They were more powerful than the government, and they used that to gain what they want, as you've seen in the movie. And you wouldn't dare go against them.
There was also the fact that when Ireland became what we call the Free State in 1921, it had been a British colony until that point. So there was no industry, there was no infrastructure. So the only people capable who had the infrastructure, the organisation to provide healthcare, education, and all of these things was the Catholic Church, because they were the only ones who were doing it when the British left. But that automatically gave them massive power over the state and over the people. And then you also had a situation where people were poor and uneducated, and they looked to the church for support and for guidance. And I think the thing that we shouldn't underestimate about the film that we've just seen is the sense of social control. Even the lady who owned the pub was saying, Bill, you've got to look out for yourself here. You have to look out for your family. And because of all that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a child out of wedlock. There was nothing wrong about doing that in the 60s or the 70s either. But when we collectively decide that those things are wrong, we can decide that other people, the children like the child that Buddy was, are lesser. And it's very easy to punish people when you can turn it into us, the good, and them, the not so good. And it was really only in my generation, which is just a little half generation maybe after yours, that things started to change around about the time of this film in the 1980s. But that baggage still, it remains with you because of what happened to you, but it also remains with me. And it would probably remain with my children because of what we bring to the table as fathers and as parents. So even though that influence that you mentioned doesn't exist today, it still exists somewhere up here. There's no getting rid of it. Did we have any more questions? Yes, sir. There's a microphone coming to you there.
First and foremost, super strong of you to be on stage, share your story.
Thank you.
Share your experience with us. I think it makes us all a bit emotional for hearing these stories, and I think it's good that we hear them because we need to know what has happened. When I see both the movie and hear you speak, I think there's no way to justify what these people have done to you. And I don't want this question to come up as disrespectful, but is there a part of you who has been trying to understand how they justify this type of behavior and why?
I think I answered that a little bit earlier of because the priests and nuns are frustrated within, because every human being needs to have intimate contact with the other person, with the other sex. They need to, but nuns didn't have that and neither did the priests. So they took it out on the boys and the girls. And I think that is my view. I don't know if you feel I'm wrong, but I think that would really boil down to that. I think so. How do you feel about? Yes, Millie.
You know, I think it's nearly the other way around, like that predators seek out professions where they come in contact with vulnerable children who do not have a voice of their own.
Sorry, I'll listen to that again. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Do you not think it's merely the other way around, that predators seek out professions where they come in contact with vulnerable people and children without a voice of their own?
That's a very good point. I'd say definitely a certain amount of them. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
I think we also have to look at the issue of power, and especially when it comes to children, because children don't know anything. You were as innocent as the day was long when you went into Goldenbridge. And if we have a situation where people are able to exert power and control over people, and that could be in a school situation, it could be in an orphanage, it could be in a relationship, if that power goes unchecked, that's never good, because all of us want more power and we want more control over the world around us. And that's the reason that in Western societies we have, or many societies, we have checks and balances to stop us from doing things like that. And yet we're seeing those things eroded more and more. If you look at, the rule of law in certain places, people can be just deported or that. And this is why we have to, what really was lacking for me in the Ireland that I grew up in and the Ireland that Buddy grew up in was holding power to account. It simply never happened. And to this day, it doesn't happen. If you do something, I discovered a politician in Ireland the other day who was also, he was a former politician who pretends to be a journalist, who's also coaching politicians for election. And if you did that in Sweden, rightfully, you'd be run out of town on a rail. But in Ireland, everybody just shrugs their shoulders. There's a gentleman here at the front, Lena, who has a question. If we could get the microphone down. She's just on her way to you now, sir. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for sharing a very strong story and life experience. I was writing a book about a boy growing up in a SOS children village, and I visited children villages in Bolivia. I was invited by the Swedish organization, but since I'm Bolivian, I reached out in a different way with the people working there, and I heard other stories that they normally don't share. So I know that there's rape going on. Many of the children are raped. There are grown-ups visiting the SOS children villages. They do different kind of punishments, especially towards the girls with chili that they put inside and other things. And I informed SOS in Sweden about this when I came back from writing this book, and so far they haven't done anything about it. This is also the reason why you and anyone who sponsors SOS, any family here can do that, but you can never write directly to the child that you sponsor. You can write and they will answer you. It will take you 3 weeks to get the answer. Yet that the world that they describe is always perfect. They have no internet access. They have no access to email. And this is still going on. I checked earlier this year, since I'm republishing these books. And you can still not contact them via email if you sponsor a child. So that's a proof of that it's still going on. And I have tried to tell organizations about it. Nothing happens. Mm-hmm. So I hope you have success in sharing this. Maybe spared some light to this horrible situation that still is going on in other similar realities.
I think that's the power of a film like the one that we've just seen this evening, is if nothing else, it starts a conversation like the one we've tried to have here this evening. I'd like to say thank you to Lena and to Lucky Dogs for setting this up, to our friends from notorious who reached out to many of you, to the lovely people here at the Grand who've done such a great job in hosting us here this evening. Do tell your friends to go and see this film. It goes on general release all over Sweden this Friday, the 14th of November. One more final round of applause for Buddy Mooney, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Tack så mycket. Safe home.
Thank you.